Hi and welcome to the ipv4depletion.com site and the tool where you can make your own estimates. First of all, if you're only interested in the INA depletion date, there's no really reason to run the tool. You can just look here at the top of the page and that's going to give you the INA depletion date, which is October 29th to date, and it's updated daily. If you want to tweak the predictions a little bit, you can use the tool. If you have any questions or concerns or any feedback you want to give me, you can reach me at stefan@lagerholm.com. So let's dig into the tool. So the first thing you need to do is you need to look at the growth estimates in each region. So in this case, I'm having my default configuration, which is linear for Africa, and ARIN, which is US, Canada, and some of the Caribbean islands. And exponential in the rest of the world. But you can of course tweak this. If you want to try, say, exponential everywhere or linear everywhere, just change to that and see how the end game is going to play with your settings. Next thing you want to look at is the amount of historical data to use. I'm using 4 years of historical data when I'm doing my projections forward, but you can use as little as 1 year of historical data, or as much as 7 years if you're interested and you want to go really far back in the history and make your predictions based on that. So you can play with that. Also the regional policies. So there's a policy in each region, or a policy under discussion in each region, that is setting aside IPv4 addresses and makes them harder to get when the end game is playing. So for example, in ARIN, the ARIN region, there's a 2009/2 under discussion that's supposed to set aside a /9 consisting of about 8 million addresses, and you can only allocate a /20 at a time from this /9 for you as a service provider or end user, whatever you are. So it's going to slow down how IPv4 addresses will be allocated. So if you want those to be implemented when the tool runs, keep those checked. If you want to uncheck them, do so. Next thing you want to look at is the usability. So there's some researchers out there that suggest that some of the blocks, such as 1.000, 2.000, or 100.000, are not usable on the internet because they're used so heavily internally on networks, and or they're used by product vendors as a default configuration and thus can't be used. E-blocks, that's the upper 16 blocks, 240 to 255. Some researchers again suggest that those will not, currently they are in reserved for future use, but some people suggest that they can never come into play because some old operating system can't handle them. So my default setting is that they can't be used. If you think they can be used, just check this box, and the tool will take those into account. And if 188/8 belongs to RIPE, so there's an issue with the 188/8 block because it's supposed to be in the various pool, but RIPE is already using it. So if you think that should be in the RIPE pool, have this checked, and that's how it seems to be. If you believe that it's still free for all in 188/8, uncheck this box. Various goes to 1/5 to each RER or to INA. So in the case where the various goes 1/5 to each RER, what's going to happen is that, and that seems to be the case, that they already decided that they're just going to split up the various pool into each regional registrar, and each regional registrar gets their own chunk. Except for RIPE, then they're going to get a little bit less because they already start to eat from those addresses since they're using 188. So you can also set this that it goes to INA. So basically, when INA runs out of addresses, it will start allocating from the various pool, and people are going to request addresses. Regional registrars are going to request allocate addresses the same way as they are doing now, and get 2 at a time from the various pool instead of from the free pool. Finally, there's some additional settings. The 2-block gentleman agreement, which is an agreement between the regional registrars and that they should only allocate 2 blocks at a time, and that seems to be the case, and it's not a formal policy, but it's a gentleman agreement, and that seems to be how they are doing. INA n equals 1 policy, so there's a policy that sets aside 5 blocks, and they're going to hand those blocks out to each individual, one each to each individual regional registrars as we are running out of IPv4 addresses. That's already decided, so that should be checked, but if you want to play with it unchecked, you can do so. RER shopping allowed, so if you believe that when we are running out of IPv4 addresses in one region, the demand is going to shift into another region, and they're going to basically take IPv4 addresses from the other region. Or if you think that we're going to prevent that, so the default setting is that we can't prevent that, so RER shopping is allowed. But you can play with both. So for example, what happens if RIPE that handles Europe gets depleted? Can a company in Europe go to Africa, for example, and allocate addresses from Africa after the RER pool in RIPE gets depleted? So that's the question here. Finally, how many months demand should the RERs wait until they have before they allocate more addresses? So the policy says 9 months demand. In reality, they seem to wait until they have like 6 months demand before they allocate. But you can also go down to 3 months demand here if you want them to wait a little bit longer and to have a really small pool before they request more space. So finally, when you have put your settings together, just hit submit. It's going to take a couple of seconds. And as you can see here, you get a description of the date, what's going on, and okay, so 10 days or so from now, Asia Pacific is going to request some more addresses. And then drilling down, we can go down here and we can see that the INA pool gets depleted in October of next year. And then you see the n equals 1 block gets distributed to each regional registrar, and then we distribute the various blocks to the regional registrars, and with each regional registrar sets aside what they have decided in their policy to set aside, and the tool continues to run. And as you can see here, about a year later, on 9/11 actually, the year after, so 2.5 basically years from now, the first regional registrar, which would be Asia Pacific in this case, would be depleted, totally depleted. So there's no more addresses in Asia Pacific. But the demand, since we're using RER shopping, will shift from that, from Asia Pacific into the other regions. So the big companies there will request space from ARIN and RIPE perhaps, or from Africa instead. And then in 2011, 12, just 3 months later, just before Christmas, all the different pools are going to be depleted. And by that time, there's no more IPv4 addresses in the free pool, and the only IPv4 addresses we have are the ones that are already allocated. So again, have fun playing with the tool. ipv4depletion.com. Check it out.